Well, once again, welcome VC Feasters. Welcome to VCF East 2024. Today we're going to be hearing from DJ from NABU, and he'll be talking to us about reimagining the NABU. So please give a big hand for DJ.
So I'm going to pull this out. A few of the NABUers have seen this. I'm going to put this here. This is an original from NABU, 1980-ish, early. All the founders of NABU were given one of these when the company was formed. And this was given to me by my uncle John Bobak, who I visited in Ottawa when I was down there. I guess it's up there, down there from where I am, last week with Leo. So I'm going to keep this here because, he's with us now, right here. Okay, so NABU Retret, I'm DJ Schurz. As Leo left his presentation, we had a little bit of a crossover. So I have a history with NABU because I was born during the time of NABU just starting, 1980. And everybody at that time in my family was super excited about NABU. And they're super excited about this new technology, and they were creating something that was going to be like, well, the internet, but before the internet was around. So I think of history and all of the memories of actually NABU. Because, you have memories. I have memories because we had in the NABU office a lounge when you first walked in. This is a ChatGPT recreation of what I try to describe. There's a few funny ones that came up with where like the couches were in the server room, but this one will be the best we'll do. So there was a lounge that you would come in, and there was a window and a door into a server room. The thing about the server room is it was extremely cold. So, and this is proof I was there. So it was, and the reason why I have this memory at being at 4 or 5 years old is because it was funny for people, probably like Leo, to lock us in the server room, which was like 5 degrees Celsius. So we would go in there all the time and had like the white floor, like you'd imagine, like the uplifted floor, and it was pretty funny. So I don't know if Leo actually locked me in. So yeah, I don't. In 2024, that could be a bad accusation. So I did get not locked in for long periods of time, but when you're a kid, your parents would push you in there and close the door, and you'd be like, oh, it's cold. So that was one of the memories. So the NABU Network, as you know, as Leo left it, was a online system. The idea was to have a diskless system, no storage, cloud as we know it today. So we have some pros, we got some cons. Let's take a look at some of these pros and cons, shall we? No local storage, isn't that great? 1980-something, no floppy disks, no tape, no cost associated with it, right? Cons, no local storage. So, first of its kind for consumers. Obviously, that was a great thing because it set off an entire era, right? They were the first kind of to come up with this. And a con in this case is, first of its, I promise it's the last time I do this. Pros, real-time access to new software titles. That was a real big deal back then because you have to remember there was no internet. There was no BBSs really. So you had to, and if there was, it was 300 baud or 1200 baud. So you'd have to go down to a store, you'd have to go and buy your discs, and you'd have to do that whole thing. And that was hard for people to do and at least wrap their mind around. So that was a pro. Now, the con is that they had to create their own hardware for it, which meant those software titles were limited. You didn't have a billion software titles. Commodore 64 had a ton more than the NABU obviously did, because Leo covered almost every program ever made. Accessing the stock market before the paper. Now, this is something I never considered until just recently, because we were having lunch with my uncle John Bobak on Friday before we came here. Thursday, Friday, doesn't matter. Lost track of days, last couple of days. It's been an awesome conference, by the way. I love it. I love being able to touch things, It's been an awesome time. So it's been a blur to me. But accessing the stock market was a huge, huge deal. Leo mentioned that there was a customer he had one day that was like, I'll pay $1,000 a month for this access, just this alone. Because back then you didn't have internet access. You didn't have the ability to get it. So stock market's closed. You waited till that paper got delivered, right? And you got to see what yesterday's market closed at. There we go. Oh, I guess I merged two together. Okay, cons. No automation. Leo had to enter all that information every night. So Leo was the automation, essentially. He would take the information from like an X25 packet off the stock market. He would dump it into the NABU and then run down to the, didn't you have to run to like the actual Cogeco or something? Or?
No,
Okay, you had a modem, so yeah. What are you complaining about then? Other emerging computers were interested in the NABU network, believe it or not. And interesting story, having lunch with my Uncle John, he brought up something, because Leo was really asking all the questions, right? I didn't have a lot of questions to ask my family about NABU. Plus, it's a touchy subject. Some people like it, some people don't. There's some bad blood there from bad memories. So one of the things that my Uncle John said was, why did we make our own computer? Right? Now, the MSX didn't exist yet. And I know when the NABU came out, there was people like, oh, the MSX is just a copy of it. Well, the MSX is a copy of the NABU. But really, the NABU is a copy of a Texas Instruments, TI-99. Like, it goes back, right? So, I mean, it was just hardware that was available at that time. So, essentially, they could have put it on any other computer that was emerging, but they didn't really know what happened. And at the time, too, my family owned 49% of Apple Canada. So, that was from Computer Innovation. So, they really could have done it that way as well. Like, Woz would have been really interested. But that didn't happen as well, as you know. And the con is they went broke. So, as Leo said, $40 million, something like that. I heard 30. It don't matter. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So let's talk a little bit about the NABU platform. So the NABU is a 64K Z80 machine. It has 16K of RAM, 64K of memory for your Z80. The physical layout, I mean, this is a great schematic, right? But this is like super high level. You can look at the really good stuff. The guy, James Powell, who found the NABUs in the barn find, he actually did a Bible. We call it the NABU Bible. He documented the whole schematic, everything. I did go onto nabu.ca. We have a little section called the Quiver. Go on the Quiver, and you can download it and take a look at it. It goes into great detail about it. Essentially, it's an AY3 chip. You guys are very familiar with that. TMS9918A, 16K of dedicated RAM for that. 3 I/O slots. Each I/O slot has its own interrupt, which is nice. 64K of onboard memory. Is there 4? Do you want to do this? Just kidding. And then we have, so 4 slots. Apologize for that slip up. The RS422 running at 111, 861 bits per second. And that was calculated because there's a divider on the clock for the chip and everything going from the RS to the RS422. And then the interrupts actually are kind of good and kind of bad, and you'll find out a little bit about this in the next couple slides. The keyboard and game controller are combined. You do have a video from the VDP, which is really nice, and you have an interrupt per different I/O slot, which is nice as well, and HUCA and HUCA send. So it had an onboard networking adapter, we'll call it, okay, the RS422, which internally added just a regular UART, and then it would go from the UART to the RS422 circuitry. So how the actual network laid out is you had the NABU head end. Now, can I move cursors around and show things somehow? Yeah. Oh, right on. Now where? Okay. Anyway, so yeah, you had the head end. Whoops. And the head end would broadcast through, take all the data and throw it into the modulator. The modulator would throw it onto the combiner, and the combiner would put it, I guess, onto the cable system. You had 2 devices, as Leo described. You have the adapter, which is your cable modem. You gotta remember, this is 1980 when they first started developing this, okay? 1980, so they had this idea of a cable modem and a NABU PC. So the NABU PC communication between the adapter and the PC was, like I said, 111 K, right? And then you had this 6.3 megabit per connection of all the data traveling through. So it was at 707 kilobytes per second. So you couldn't transmit all of the data to the NABU at once because it was just coming in too fast. So they packetized everything. And in the next couple of slides, I'll explain how that works. So yeah, I described the computer. Even the friggin' keyboard had a computer in it, okay? It had an MC68101 microprocessor, 2K of ROM, 128 bytes of RAM. It had parallel and I/O lines. I mean, it was an actual beast. You could essentially almost run an operating system on this thing. And it's actually well documented, this keyboard, on Desk Authority. The TH and the K next to each other is hard to pronounce. Desk Authority. So it's a great keyboard. If any of you had a chance to feel a NABU keyboard, I highly recommend it. They are the best keyboards. They're great. They clickety-clack all day. They'll keep everyone around you awake. They're amazing. all your BIOS don't belong to the NABU. There ain't no BIOS, guys. So you got your ColecoVision, you have your MSX, you have API calls, you can write games, you can do things. The MSX, or the NABU, no. So essentially it had a ROM, and there was two versions of the ROM, a 4K and an 8K, hardware switchable on the motherboard. That booted up, and all it was a boot ROM. All it did was go to the HCCA port and say, I'm alive, and I want a file downloaded called 0x000001, and I want segment number 1 of that. And it would just collect all these segments, and it would load it into RAM. So don't stop all the downloading, because your BIOS was actually downloaded. And we'll explain on how this whole system works here. Because what would happen is you'd have your cable broadcast, and you didn't have a way to talk to the head end. So they were like, how do we get the NABU to not request data back? So what happened is the actual NABU head end would broadcast every single piece of information it had on its hard drive over the cable system. It's all it did in a loop, like a carousel, spinning around, like an 8-track. Remember 8-tracks? You just like switch the track, but you can never fast forward, rewind. And what would happen is the NABU would say, I want this file, and the NABU network adapter in this case is Pac-Man, tribute to Leo, who actually had nothing to do with the NABU network adapter, but you're eating all the bytes and the bits. So the NABU network adapter would wait until that packet came over. It would collect just that chunk, and it would fire that piece off to the NABU. And as you can see by the different numbers here, this one here, like 0001 would be the main menu, which also contains essentially the BIOS that the programs would use, the iOS, and it would have a bunch of different segments. You can see 01, and then this farther over here where it's 001, 02, so it'd be split up. So they would interleave the chunks of data so that by the time the transfer to the NABU was done of one segment of that pack, the next one would come as well, right? And if you missed it, you would just have to wait for the whole cycle to come around again. So it was a painstaking process for these guys to calculate how quickly everything took to transfer so they can make sure that you had a very fast transfer speed. So as I showed in the beginning, this was your RAM starting off. You had a bootloader. That was it. Following a load off the network adapter, you had this. So at the very top, you have your iOS, which is what you run on your iPhones. And under that, you had a fake BDOS. Any CPM guys in the house? Well, one guy puts up his hand. Come on, you don't have to be embarrassed. There's no judgment here. We're all retro. So BDOS is essentially an interface for CPM for programs to talk to hardware through to do disk activity, to do everything through the BIOS of the hardware. Okay. So what NABU did is they said we're going to use CPM as the foundation for our operating system, but we're not going to actually use CPM. No, we're just going to use the same port addresses. We're going to do the same stuff, but we're going to remove the disk activity. So we're just going to say, you want to write to the screen? Yeah, right. Just pretend you're CPM and pretend that we're CPM and do it. But if you want to access a floppy drive, no, sorry, that moves a sprite. So there were some interesting changes the way it worked. But the next thing they did is they had this thing underneath, which is called downloadable modules. And a downloadable module, which goes XiOS, that's the Android version of the iOS, by the way. You would actually be able to download modules that would run and install into iOS. So if you had, for example, BASIC running, and you needed to be able to access the floppy drive to save, well, iOS itself didn't have any, like I mentioned, any floppy activity or any storage. So XiOS would load in a module which would give you floppy activity. So they actually well thought this out for expandability, and it was a really well-designed operating system. And then under that, you have your TPA, which Leo mentioned is about 45K. Depends on what you're doing with the XOS module space. And then you have your CPM page 0. So those for CPM, that's your first 128 bytes. That stores a bunch of things about like memory addresses, the start of BDOS, things like that. So Leo covered a lot of the business. We're just kind of, I'm not going to explain the same things he did, but let's go over a few things that I find really interesting. It was a subscription service, 1980, right? Like you're already paying for cable. So I mean, is it really that hard to believe you wouldn't pay for your intranet over cable? I mean, who does that now? Oh, nobody, right? So pricing was interesting, $9.95. And these are prices right from the actual NABU interface. Like you actually log on to NABU and you actually get pricing, which you're already paying for, so they give it to you anyway, just to remind you. And NABU computer, you get the whole computer for $9.95. Education channel, $7.95. Now this is when they first started, right? This is the very first cycle. Prices did fluctuate over time. You can buy CPM for $125. I don't know how much Gary sold CPM for. Anyone know? No. So we'll just say $125. Sounds expensive. But yeah, a printer cable, $49.95. So they were, I don't know, they had that like Best Buy deal. It's like, yeah, sure, you can buy a TV for $8, but that monster cable is $900. So they had that same approach. Yeah, there's rental. No, these are all rental. And purchase is purchasing CPM and purchasing the cable, right?
How much was cable service back?
I was 5. And the Smurfs, that's all I remember. And anyone else know how much cable was in the early 1980s? $30 a month? Yeah. 70, 80 now, which is what people are paying now, yeah, so, right. So some businessy stuff, more businessy stuff. So the original plan of NABU was 3-phase. They said, we're gonna build a computer, we're gonna build the network, we're gonna do it as a prototype, and then we're gonna test it in local markets. So we're gonna throw it into Ottawa region, we're gonna throw it into Saskatchewan, into rural communities, Calgary as well, is where I live. They wanted to throw it there. So that was their idea. And then they were gonna expand internationally, okay? And the plan is that the first version, the first 2 stages, was one direction. So back then, the reason why you have internet on your computers today through cable is because the amplifiers in your regional locations can do bidirectional amplification. Back then, the amplifiers were just one way. So you couldn't do bidirectional. It was just impossible to do. So their idea was, if we have enough subscribers, we can convince the cable companies to want to implement these bidirectional communication. Well, as we know, that didn't happen, but the plan is to get enough people, expand internationally, and get bidirectional. So you can upload, you can send email. Like my dad always told the story of like, oh, I should be able to do my banking and order flowers. And you know, after my parents got divorced, he was single, so he was ordering flowers to everyone. Well, that didn't happen. What ended up happening is they started selling floppy drives. It stayed in Canada. It stayed actually local to Ottawa, and they burnt through about $30 million in around 4 years. If you put that in perspective in today's money, that is insane. And I'm not allowed to tell you any of the stories I've heard from my uncle about where that money went and how the parties were, but I'm not allowed to say any of that, but just use your imagination. Let's get to my story, how Leo and I met soon. This is the precursor to our friendship, bond over NABU. 8 days of, I would use a different word, but NABU came out. I'm in Thunder Bay for the summer, and got all my NABU stuff, and Robin Harbour from 8-Bit Show and Tell sends me a message and says, hey man, we're doing our retro computing night. Do you want to bring a bunch of NABU stuff and show it off? So I bring all this NABU stuff, and you got to see all these people, right? We're all geeking out, and all of a sudden I bring my NABU stuff, and people are just like, I don't believe this existed. I never heard of this before. I don't know who. This guy made this stuff up, right? And I got like share certificates and everything. It's just like, you did a really well job of fabricating the past, but this did not exist. So I head back to Calgary. I get back to Calgary. 2 weeks later, I got a text message from Robin. Oh shit, I should have put it in, oh, sorry, I swore. Sorry, I should have put it in this presentation, but Robin sends me a text. I get up in the morning, it says, eBay now, NABU. I was like, whoa, and I click, there they are, 2,500 NABU units. And I think I paid like $28 at the time when they first came, right? The very first. And I'm like, oh, dude, so I didn't have any with me in Calgary, so I bought one, because my old NABUs were in Ontario. So bought one, and I couldn't wait to get it. And then Adrian made his video, and I made a video as well. Then a lot of people were challenging what these things could be used for. Project boxes, what everyone was saying. And I was just like, hold my beer. So off we go. The original project plan. So I reached out to Zig Niehoff from York University, because I found their stuff. And I said, look, man, and I presented him this. This is actually a copy and paste from the email. I put this together in PowerPoint. And I said, look, this is what I want to do. I want to have some sort of ESP32 Wi-Fi adapter, connect to the internet. I really didn't know fully how it worked yet. I just knew enough about this to do this. And I was going to have like a TCP server that would actually be the head end. And I was going to emulate the whole cycle. That was the whole process, right? So I set off to my 8 days of hell. What happened? Am I doing something for that? Am I just shockingly? Okay. So this is my first internet app. This is the very first day number 1 of 8, when I set off to build it. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to reach out to Zygmunt. He wasn't giving me information at the time yet. This was me just trying to figure stuff out. I was blasting bits at it. Santo gave me a ROM file. I think it was LeBomb. I think he actually disassembled it, commented about a bunch of stuff on it. So I was able to start seeing where things were happening, what the communication looked like. And I was able to get it to prompt a channel code. And I remember all of you on YouTube were commenting on I went from like 0 subscribers to like 1,000, and I felt, amazing. So it was awesome. So all of you who were commenting, you're the reason why I powered through it, because there was many sleepless nights of going through assembler, trying to figure out, and of course, nothing disassembles Z80 very well. So there was like data that was also interpreted as instructions. So there was a lot of mess in there for me to decipher. Day number 2, I was able to, Zygmunt sent me a code file. He sent me some assembly. And he says, if you can compile this, this will work on your NABU. And I look at it. Now, you got to remember, we don't really know much about the NABU. I knew there was no ROM, and I was kind of confused, because inside of his code he sent me, the Z80 assembler, it had references to BDOS commands. And I'm like, where are these going to go? Like, there's no memory address at these spaces. So, of course, I'm trying to compile and run some program that is accessing memory that doesn't exist. He was giving me something that I needed a main menu for. I needed an operating system for. So there's nothing I can do with it. But it did help me understand, when he gave me the pack file, understand exactly what the header looked like. Now, I don't know if he was trying to like push me off course because he didn't want another NABU network running out there or what, but he gave me just a tiny little bit that I was able to figure out what the header was. And at that point, I was able to send stuff. Now, this doesn't look like much, but I was sending stuff, and the NABU was taking it. And boy, I was excited. It was sort of listening to things I was doing. Now we're in day number 4. Oh, I had enough. So there's people on the YouTube asking all these questions. Are you really part of the NABU, like your family, things like that? So I did a reflection video where I just said, look, after my dad passed away, I went through all of his stuff and found all his old NABU things. And of course, I threw out a lot of it, which at the time, you gotta remember, like, I didn't know what we were gonna do with it. I kept certain things. Like I mentioned, it was not a great time for my family, so there wasn't a lot of people who wanted to see me keep stuff. But I kept a lot of things, newspaper clippings, the works. Jumped back at it in day 4. I now was able to document what the header looked like, and I was confident about this. And I spent that night, man, I don't think I slept. I was pushing bytes at this thing nonstop. If it was an SD card and a Raspberry Pi, that thing would not have booted up anymore. It was read, write to this thing nonstop, and I hammered it hard. And the next day, if you guys remember, hello friggin' world. NABU spoke. It lived. I was able to send my own assembler to it. Didn't have any BDOS commands and any BIOS. I just used the font that was already inside of the, I created my own font and I loaded it into the VDP memory, I think, if I recall. You have to look at the video and see. You can correct me later. Oh, see all the NOPs? There was a reason. I can't remember. It had something to do with, the HCCA port. In order to read and write to the HCCA port, somebody mentioned this on YouTube at one point and saved us, is that it's one start bit and one stop bit, but we turned it to 2 stop bits because the communication was too fast. And it was at a weird baud rate. Remember, it was 111 kilobits per second. It wasn't quite the 115. So adding this extra stop bit just gave it enough that there was enough of a threshold for the UARTs, the max 32 kind of thing, to pick up the bits correctly. So that worked, and that was awesome. And then I wake up on the 30th, and I get this message. And you gotta remember, I've been getting a lot of emails from a lot of people, some weird ones, some nice ones, some compliments, and I got this one on LinkedIn. If you want your NABU dreams to come true, connect with me, send me an email. I have the full cycle, the iOS, the almost all applications, as well as source code for some of them. That's Leo. 2:55 p.m. As you can see underneath it, I did not take much time to reply. So Couple exclamation marks there. Those who watch my video and love my optimism, amazing. You can hear me saying it. I was so excited. We jumped on the phone that night, and quite after, when he got home, he's like, I'm at work. I'll call you when I get home. And he said, I'm going to send you a file. And he sent me 0001. And I loaded it into the NABU Network adapter. And that created what we have today, everything. And since that point, I've created 92 videos about the NABU. I guess this will be 93. 50 NABU programs. We can play with some of them. And of course, a NABU lib SDDK using Z88DK on its C dev library. So that is what people are using for some games and things like that. So what are we for time here? Have I whipped through it quick? Oh yeah, we got some time. Good. Okay, so I'm gonna shut this down and I'm gonna show you this first. I loaded this up. I didn't put it in the presentation. Apologize. I was at my uncle's. This was in his basement. So this is actually Computer Innovations, one of the company. This is a poster on his wall, framed, of Computer Innovations, one of the companies that merged to become NABU as we know it. And I'm just going to ask you if you guys can recognize that logo. Yeah. So when John Kelly and my Uncle John, the two Johns, got together and they went to Mount St. Clair, Mount St. Marie. That's where they went up the mountain. There was 12 companies. John described it as 12 companies went up, 5 or 6 came down. And John Kelly says, I love that logo so much. And he merged it in with the NABU to create, with the scan lines to create the NABU logo as we know it today. So what I was planning to do today was just play a little bit with you and have some fun, because I don't know how many of you have seen the NABU work. So what this is, the NABU Network adapter. This is my version. There's plenty out there. This one is essentially the same original code as the very first version I had done, just with a different type of interface that's evolved over time. And on the left here, we have these things called channels. And I call them channels. A channel, because it's NABU, right? It was hooked up to cable system, so a channel could be different programs. You have things like homebrew, but you also have like the original cycles. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the original cycle, and we're going to load up the original MAME build that Brian did, because I have not updated, because I'm just one of those guys. It works. Why? Don't fix it if it ain't broke. I'm going to get some volume here. Oh, he said he was going to do it. He's going to check it right now. Oh, geez. Okay. We'll get into this in a second here. Do you want me to just put the microphone near the speaker, or?
It might not be advisable.
Here, let's see. I got it set for speakers, so we should be okay. Should I just play some audio just to see if things work for you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Anyone's channel you want me to run? No. Here's some internet on the news today.
Many main characters
Oh.
go over the years, but the ones
That's coming from here.
just excited to head out the
Can I change my output sound settings? Windows man, right? See, that's going to come out the HDMI, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's not detecting for some reason. Try it again.
door and get in.
No. How about this? Can I do this? No. Sorry, everyone.
The work were Jacob Wall and Jack Burnham, two self-styled conservative.
And I'll just go down here and
operatives.
disappear. Okay, hopefully we didn't get any copyright strikes for putting that video on here. Where are we here? Okay, so we can get to this, actually, might as well do it now. So because the NABU is a device that you want to sit far away from, I came up with an idea last February about having something called a headless display. I called it AI control. And the idea is that you can select your channels. You can control what channel is being selected in here through an interface. So every time the NABU loads up, this menu loads, and then there's some logic to determine what the next program is and then come back to it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show you, I want the excitement to maintain. Reminder, what we're going to see here is the thing I saw when Leo sent me the main menu, and I loaded up, and it's the first time anyone's seen this, and I put it on YouTube in like 40 years, right? So I was I was excited. I don't know if you remember seeing my video, but I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh God. Okay, because when Leo gave it to me, I hit start on the NABU and it started booting up and I saw it go and I shut it off. So I'm not lying. When you watched it with me on that YouTube video, that was the exact same moment I saw it too. So we watched it together. I really wanted to share that because you guys were so supportive through the process. So here, I'm gonna show this to you. You guys could hear that okay? And then you get to your main menu, and that was ecstatic. That was like the longest, I don't know, 5-6 seconds of my life when I watched that boot up. It's any of your kids watching this now are just like, wow, you were excited about that? GIFs have higher resolution than that. So your main menu, you can pop through and you can load different programs. Of course, I'm going to show a few things here, but one of the things we're going to show off is Pac-Man. Right? Leo did a lot of talk about this. So before every load, you would get an advertisement, something. Welcome to Era. And as you can see, Pac-Man is exactly the way Leo described it. Real music. Oh. Yeah. So he also mentioned that yesterday I asked him, I says, can I do this? And the answer was not yes. Oh, you have to wait for him to go?
You have to make him go down to the bottom where you were and then go up there.
Is that what it was? Okay. So down here? How far? Is it?
You go back to that spot, get somebody up there. Okay, see, he'll go right by it. No, he would have
Okay.
Yeah, but he won't there. He won't go up.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, I'm reset. You're judging my Pac-Man skills. So this is about the new stuff. So my era of NABU is the reimagining. I keep wanting to use the word rebirth, but that just sounds terrible and painful. So the reimagining of the NABU is, first off, I didn't have any floppy disks and any floppy storage at all. And I had to work with what we had, and that was a NABU with a network adapter. And as floppy disks came to be, I know many people have added support for their NABUs are floppy. So I intended to do more of a vanilla native, continue the tradition, mostly because my family was watching. But Leo has poisoned me by giving me a floppy drive, so expect some floppy access inside of my CPM BIOS. So what I've done is continued the legacy of NABU's original development, which was let's put everything on what we call the cloud today, but it's not really the cloud in the sense that this thing, so the NABU network adapter, your internet adapter, between that and the physical NABU is your cloud. This is actually your cloud. So when you hear me, we use the word cloud for something, that's it. Now there are files that can get downloaded. So what we have inside here is a bunch of different programs, essentially, and that other people have made. If we go under, for example, games, you can see here that we have different programs that have been made. Most of these ported from Brian Johnson. And we have little menus, our little icons as well. Everything is downloaded for this kind of stuff. And then we have Retret, which is what Leo and I started. Essentially, it's the NABU preservation group. It's just a little group that we're doing where we're funding it ourselves to make sure that all the information for NABU is maintained and continually accessible. We want it to be accessible forever. So we have a server called cloud.nabu.ca that has everything on it, and you can push this button called download all things, and all my base will belong to you, and you get everything. So the first thing I did was I made a couple different programs, Chat. And Chat was super, super exciting because when I got this thing working, it was terrible at the beginning because I couldn't get the interrupts to work, and it was the first time that I had done anything with a Z80 before. So this is Athena. This is actually a GPT. So if no one else is in the chat, you can actually talk to Athena. You're like, hi, it's DJ. Oops. Hi, it's DJ. And Brian and I was really fun because he got MAME working, and we had a conversation. He reached out to me and figured out how we can get the serial port to work, and we suggested a TCP port, and that TCP port existed to this day. So he got MAME working, I got this working, and the very first YouTube video was the two of us chatting with two NABUs, which had never been done before across the world, and it was just fantastic to see happen. So that was a very delightful moment. And then after that, I got some ideas about an operating system. Now, I didn't really know much about CPM at the time, so I created this concept of a CPM BIOS, which would load and save all of its storage remotely. So no disks, okay? So this is it. And I don't think you've heard this as well, but I did make the NABU speak, which is...
Loading CloudCPM fancy.
So this menu will speak everything that you do. I just kept adding stuff to this thing. So this is the fancy loader. This is CloudCPM. It's a 40-column TMS 9918, but you can scroll left and right for virtual 80. I filled it full of tons and tons and tons of different programs, everything from music to graphical interfaces. One of the first things I wanted to do is I wanted to create something called Cloud GUI, which is a graphic interface for CPM. So this is it. You can actually use a mouse, it was really cool. And you can load up windows and copy and move windows around, load files. You can actually map a drive from the NABU to your physical drive. So drive D is a real-time drive. It always exists. So you can actually like put a file inside of drive D and it'll just exist in the NABU. So like if I take, I don't know, computer innovations and throw it in my documents, NABU, store, D drive, user area 1. Oh, look, I got some files in there already. And I just go File, New, open up a new window, D drive, and it's going to create the folder, and there we go. And there's our companion JPEG. I can move windows around. So this is actually going to be next an actual interface for CPM, so you can do a full graphic environment. So that's the next step. I'll exit this. Some other things that I created at the time too, which I think have been really, really, really cool, is under user area 1, we have telnet, so you can telnet from here. We have IRC, you can IRC. The telnet actually does ANSI and VT52. I created user area 1 mode, so you can actually switch the BIOS from ADM3 to VT52 mode. So you can save that. You can change a printer, so you can print to a file on your internet adapter. Just going crazy with as much networking as I can possibly come up with, right? Jukebox is pretty cool. You can actually play music, but then I have this thing called Slideshow. Anyone seen that? Slideshow is freaking awesome. There's this guy, I can't remember his last name, Mike. He created on the Texas TI-99 a program that would convert images into TMS 99 tiles, and it would render them. Can anyone remember any of these slides as I put them up? Does anyone know what this show is from? Anyone from Ontario? No? And it would blast out AY. It was a TV Ontario show called Read All About It. So everything I did was 80s themed on this. So it just randomly grabs like something like 300 and something images and 27,000 songs or something like that, and it randomly plays them. So Prince of Persia, right? Yeah. So this is really neat. People always like to keep this running in your background. Yeah. You got it. Space Force. Yeah. This is not actually, it could just turn into a trivia game, but under the umbrella tree, right on. So that was really cool. That was a lot of fun. Oh, that's an Ottawa thing? Well, I was between Ottawa and Thunder Bay. So the really neat thing is, I was watching this video. Somebody, I don't know if everyone remembered it happened. It happened last year. I think it was in May. It's one of the last things I did for NABU before I stepped away for a while. And somebody posted a video on the Commodore 64, how to make the C64 speak. Anyone see that? It's a really well done video. He talked about how you can exploit some code inside the SID chip, how you can send some commands and make it tick. But you can also make it tick at different volumes. So there you end up with a DAC, right? So I was like, can AY do that? So I did a Google search, and some guy made a video where he was like, I made the AY speak, and it just like, and I did a video about it. I was like, I think we could do better than that. So I spent some time that night, and I just kept poking at it until I found it doing something. And once it started making these clicks at different volumes, I was like, can I make it speak? So I did this.
Loading. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25 26 27 28 29 30 31 32 33 34 35 36 37 38 39 40 41 42 43 44 45 46 47 48 49 50 51 52 53 54 55 56 57 58 59 60 61 62 63 64 65 66 67 68 69 70 71 72 73 74 75 76 77 78 79 80 81 82 83 84 85 86 87 88 89 90 91 92 93 94 95 96 97 98 99 100 101 102 103 104 105 106 107 108 109 110 111 112 113 114 115 116 117 118 119 120 121 122 123 124 125 126 127 128 129 130 131 132 133 134 135 136 137 138 139 140 141 142 143 144 145 146 147 148 149 150 151 152 153 154 155 156 157 1 NABU.
You guys hear that? Super quiet, right? I know. Let me try it again here. Falcon, volume's up all the way. Where are my speakers? That's probably why. Okay, so greetings, Professor Falcon, right? Had to do that. And then I was like, wait a second, if I can make it speak there, can I do this? So I was like,
Hi. It's a pleasure to be at VCF East.
cool, right? Thank you. And so yeah, I was really proud of that. And then there was a bunch of other programs too, and I know we don't run on too much time here, but I want to show you two last things that I did. I have to reboot back into it. These are the most recent updates that I've done for the NABU. Some of you may have seen the video, so to see it in real life is kind of exciting. Oh, you've seen the bad apple as well. Have you seen my bad apple as well? Okay, so I don't have to show that one. Or do I? Yeah, I do, really quick. I'm proud of this one. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. I was able to use the AY chip. I was also able to do full motion video because we have access to this network port that is so fast. Crazy thing about the network port, as this computer reboots here, is you only have, because it's 111 kilobytes per second, you only have about 7 to 8, depends on the CPU instructions, between bytes on the Z80 to do something with. So when data comes in, like you gotta figure out where that data is going really, really fast. And that's always a kind of a pain in the ass in many cases. This is a small little bug coming out of bad apple. So and this leads up to what I'm gonna show you now, is that I was having a conversation on Discord one day about doing some, like how much can you offload onto the network adapter? What can we throw onto it? How fast is it? Can we help with processing? Can we use it as a CPU essentially? So I created this idea that I was pushing around for a while since last year. This is NADU on the NABU. So believe it or not, I know it's hard to, it looks more like Wolfenstein, that's right. So you have access in here to be able to do things like increase and decrease the field of view, which I think helps things. You can also increase the speed, which these are values I should really hard code because I got them. I always do this every time I demo it. It's really neat too. You can move around while the menu's open. I thought that was kind of wild. The map that you're actually going to be in, if you want to explore it, is actually the Doom map. So it's Wolfenstein, but it's only one level of Doom, like one Z level of Doom. But yeah, it's kind of neat. So what I'm actually doing is I'm able to offload a lot of the processing to the internet adapter through the HCCA port because it's fast enough to do so. And you can see I'm getting a pretty decent frame rate doing that. And you have a little map in the corner which you can turn on and off with the letter M. So it's pretty wild. And then when I put that up, I had a lot of people in Discord asking questions like, holy shit, sorry, I did it again. How did you do that? And one of the answers I had was, well, the port's fast enough. And one guy, Production Dave, is a big game developer in NABU, he says, he challenges me, right? Oh, I hate when people do that, because if you challenge me, this is my kryptonite. I won't stop thinking about it, and that's why I keep creating all these things. People are like, wow, you're really devoted. And it's like, no, I'm broken. Right, among friends, thank you. This is actually a support group. Hi, my name is DJ. I have a problem. So he says, how can you do full motion video, like real time, not just like with Bad Apple, but Bad Apples you saw were 40 column mode with some tiles, right? So 40 tiles. Can you do full motion bitmap graphics? And I was like, okay. So the way the NABU works, the TMS-99, is that you have 16K of RAM, which is great. And the TMS-99 allows you to go into graphics mode that splits the screen into 3 chunks. And when you do that, you can put tiles. A tile is essentially, it's a square that's 8 by 8 pixels, and you can have 256 of them on the top, 256 on the bottom, and underneath that. Now it's a tile. So then a tile has its own memory, or its own arrangement, right? So because you're using individual tiles, you can actually update the tiles bits individually which is now just the bits. That's just on or off. But to select the color, you need another map table that turns on and off the color. But you can only have 2 colors per tile, a foreground and a background tile. So when a bit is on, it's foreground. When it's off, it's background. So I couldn't do color right out of the get-go, but it's 6,144 bytes. That's that short. So to do a whole screen is 6,144 bytes. The bandwidth, you guys didn't hear that, but there's an Easter egg.
Programming CloudCPM.
It talks to you if you don't touch it for a while, and it starts actually crying for help. It's like touch me, don't leave me. So at 6,144 bytes per page, I needed and at 111 kilobits per second. That's 11K per second. Start and stop bits roundabout. So I can get under 2 frames per second. So then I started experimenting with some different compression. And of course, I just jumped into RLE, and I was super surprised, since we're just doing white and black, how fast RLE was. So then I was like, oh, okay, can I do this? So you guys might have seen this and know where I'm coming from. But I created NABU Cam, which I was just blown away when it worked. And I couldn't even make the video fast enough. I was so excited. So I'm going to hit 0 to select my camera, and off we go. And thank you so much. And I'm going to show you something really neat about this. It's a decent frame rate, right? And what's really great about this is when I hit H to load the help, so you can do things, the menu to enhance the photo, I didn't have any RAM left in the VDP for text. I'm serious. Every single byte available is displaying this image. So I couldn't put the words on the screen. I had no place to put them. So these are actually being generated by the internet adapter. So I downloaded the font file from my CPM, and I loaded it into C#, and I changed it from being a uint18 to a byte array, and then I actually send that as part of the image back to it. Now, doing that, I was like, oh man, now I have another idea. Remote desktop. It's an addiction, I swear. Yeah, somebody might want to call help. So, so that became a thing. And then I was getting ready to wind down and get some sleep before coming to see you all today. And, well, as luck would have it, on Discord, somebody said, it was Henry, I think it'd be really cool if people can get their picture taken and we can print it out. Shit. How to use a printer? A printer from 1980, so I had no clue what to do. So as you can see, there's a print screen. There's actually a hidden O button as well for a different print screen. So it's really funny, and this will be the end of my talk here, and you can ask some questions after. But we're on Discord, and we got LeBom and Pewter and Henry and all these people, and they're supporting me. They're all encouraging me, like, yeah, DJ, you don't want to sleep. You don't need to sleep this week. You got to write. You're going to make it print. So I'm like, okay. So if you want to check out all the images or look at the video, I show all the. Henry thinks I had investment into ink cartridges because I was printing off, or at least paper. Blank pages were flying out of his printer nonstop because I didn't have a printer. I should have started with that. I don't have a printer. So they were printing for me. And I was doing updates to the server. Like I would just copy the file over, and then the internet adapter would grab the latest version and they would run it. So we just kept doing revisions like this nonstop. I was like, build, test, print, tree fall down. Okay, good. Build, test. So it was just nonstop. I sent a GIF once of like Rambo was shooting his gun, and it was like paper flying out of Henry's printer. So I said, how do you print? And LeBom's like, well, there's ESCP and PCL. You guys heard of these two? All right, I didn't. So I was like, okay, I thought you just sent ASCII. How do you do graphics? So of course, I spent a day or two writing ESCP. And Henry, it can't get this thing working. But I'm printing on my MAME emulator, no problem, nothing wrong. But Henry's like, no, it's not working. Just pumping out blank sheets of paper and what have you. So then finally, I find out, and Henry just kind of giggles because I'm like, or LeBom giggles because I said, oh, Henry goes, I have a inkjet. They doesn't use ESCP. So there was 2 or 3 days of my life gone. So PCL, I had to learn PCL. So I started doing bitmap graphics. Now it's really cool is because PCL allows you to specify the byte direction that it's going to read from to create a bitmap. Essentially, you're printing a single line. You can print 8 bytes this way or 8 bytes this way. You can define how it's going to read what your byte orientation is, what your direction is. So once I figured that out by reading the really poor documentation that was written by somebody far more creative than I, because it was like reading a love romance novel. Give me the facts, right? Like, I want facts. I don't need your opinion about things, about printers, but the document is written for creative minds. So I can read right from the VDP's RAM and fire it directly over to the PCL. I can assemble this one byte string and fire it over. It was great, but every image was like this big. 256 pixels this way and 192 pixels this way. That's like this big at 300 DPI. So then we start lowering the DPI, and I get it. The printer's max lowest DPI was 75, so it got like this big. So then we're sitting there, and PCL says, it will do resizing. Oh yeah, it will. So I start coding, and we spend a day on resizing. Yeah, that's like PCL 8. It was like released in 2012. This inkjet don't do that. So guess what? Software resizing in a Z80 of an image. So yeah, and then I came here. Like 2 days later. That's how fast it was. So I flew to Ottawa, spent a couple days with these guys. Leo gave me the floppy disk, and we went for lunch and then came here to visit all of you. So anybody who gets to play with it, yeah. I'm very tired from those last 2 days. But I think that's it. I think, is there anything else anyone wants to see on the NABU software that I've written that you want to see run live? You can just let me know in questions before I get down. But otherwise, I think my time is up.
Questions, comments, anybody?
Well, good. I thought I was going to have to leave with no questions.
Okay, I see you did a GUI.
Yes.
There's also one that's with the MSX called Symbios. Symbios.
yeah.
You know, are you familiar with that or?
Yeah, so Symbios, I believe, I looked into it. I believe it uses like a megabyte of RAM or something it requires, so it does paging. It's also MSX2, which is a different VDP. So the NABU paging, there is one person on YouTube who did he's just recently released a video doing paging with RAM. That could be something to look into for hardware adapters, but I'd love to get into a more community-centered operating system. I think it'd be great, because I'm doing a lot of stuff on my own, but I'd love, like, come on, guys, get your NABU out. Let's start writing some code. So I have NABU lib for anyone else who wants to write these type of things as well, and I'm on Discord. But yes, I'd love to get some more community-centered graphic interfaces.
Okay.
That slide that said there was interest from other computers, was there ever any discussion about maybe making a branch of the network that like a C64 could dial into?
Do you want me to answer? I can answer a little bit of that, because you already had your, okay. So if you look inside of the main menu files of the actual cycle, there is a cycle list on the website here, and under here is C64 menus. So in the actual cycles that Leo had found, we actually have C64 main menus and code. What they sold, what they didn't sell, they built as prototypes, was adapters, cartridges you can slide into these computers, C64 and MSXs, which had a BIOS on it, and it would actually connect to, it would do essentially the same thing, but it would download C64 code instead. And Leo has...
I had it on my desk. When I left.
And for all of you who love MSXs as well, Leo actually has one of the original, on a piece of wood plank, wire-wrapped MSX prototype from before MSX existed, when they sent it to him and said, hey, do you guys want to try to support this computer? And it was just, I don't know if you've seen pictures, but it's amazing to see. But, yeah. He's afraid to turn it on because it's got big capacitors, because it's it's an old power supply.
I'm curious about the cable modem. So it sounds like the baud rate raw off the cable was really, really high, and then dropped down. Do you know how they were doing that? Did they have a lot of memory in the box?
Oh, that's a good question. It was 1K? Yeah, so I can't remember. I was on one of the slides, I was going to put something where it said how much each pack file was, but I actually made this presentation last night because I couldn't leave Silver Balls, because that place is freaking awesome. So, so I made this all last night, and I couldn't remember with the size of a single pack file, but I think it's around 512 bytes or something. So that you would get that one 512 byte pack, fire it over, wait for the, they're interleaved, wait for the next one, and fire it over as well. So there's a little bit of RAM, 1K RAM.
It is 1K with some stuff used up, but when you hear those rising
Yeah, that's right. The rising tones is neat. So when I first, if you remember my very first videos, it'd be like, it sounded like a 1980s like scrap ratch artist. But
Did it have a microcontroller in it, or was it all just TTL?
yes, it was also, it wasn't a Z80. It was a, I think it was it was the same chip as in the keyboard, a 6800.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Follow-up question. So
Yes.
it's rather embarrassing. I have a NABU sitting in a box for the last year because I don't have time to do
Get
that.
him! He's got a NABU. Who wants one?
No. You won't be able to find it in my office anyway. What do I need externally? What's the best thing? Are you still doing the ESP, or is it run a Linux machine? Is it run a Windows machine? What's the best?
That's a great question. So yesterday I was introduced to Tom from FujiNet, which I think is I think what he's doing is wonderful. And we're going to talk. We're going to figure some things out. So as I showed you with some of these videos, I'm doing a lot of offloading to the computer. I'm using a lot of computer stuff, especially for the speech synthesis. But then I met, oh God, I can't remember his name. It's another guy that he does something for the C64 called Meatball. There he is. Yeah, so he says that he ported Sam. Remember Sam from the Apple and the 64? Sure. He's ported that to the ESP32. So it looks like we can probably start pushing a lot of that processing off to the ESP32, get rid of the internet adapter on a PC at all, get rid of that dependency, get rid of the Raspberry Pi because they're not 25 bucks anymore. Yeah, and start throwing it into maybe FujiNet and combine that and get that development community working together. Yeah, sorry. So to get it up and running right now, I answered a question that was, yeah, I made you excited about something that doesn't exist yet. It's RS422, so you can just do a search for RS422 to USB, and then there's some videos, but just make sure that if you do the distance between the NABU and the adapter, make sure that's a twisted pair, and make sure you twist and pair the right ones, because in my very first videos, I did a serial cable straight through, and man, if that thing is near like any AC source, yeah, it's loading.
Crazy. And then a Raspberry Pi upstream, or?
A Raspberry Pi upstream is great. If you're running my internet adapter, it'll run on anything except for toaster, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, PC, Linux, Mac OS, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Somebody even asked for Windows 32, I think. Oh, there's a question back there. Man, yeah, actually probably if it's Android, right? The hardest part was getting OpenCV compiled for all of these different platforms to work on the internet adapter. That was a pain in the ass.
Hi, so for your adapter that you're using now, is it still just a carousel going and going and going, or are you actually making requests now? Or is there any kind of prioritization of what you are actually trying to receive?
That's a great question. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm simulating the head end, and I'm simulating the network adapter, which was the cable modem. And the cable modem, if you can want to imagine it, looks identical to a NABU. So picture a NABU on top of a NABU. So the cable modem itself would receive requests from the PC, and the PC would say, I need this particular file. The cable modem would sit there and wait until that file came by. So because of that, those two different things, those two different cogs that are running, I was able to combine those two into one. So when the internet adapter gets a request from the PC, it doesn't have to wait for it. It just goes and gets it.
Okay. Thank you, DJ.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.